guys, welcome to this week's Dots and Dashes podcast. I'm Lynn Kingsley.
And I'm Prakasha. Welcome everyone. Hi Lynn, how are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, Lynn. Lynn, we have a guest today. Would you like to introduce him for us, please?
Yes, of course. Well, as more people are living longer these days, care of the elderly in their own homes is becoming a necessity, as our guest Paul Strachan here found out. So, over to you, Paul.
Well, first of all, thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Prakash, for inviting me onto your podcast today. I'm very grateful of the invitation. So to answer your question, Lynn, I think the stoic nature of we Scots and so many people out there, we really just, no matter what difficulties confront us, we just really get our sleeves rolled up and get on with it and make the best of whatever we can do to make, in my case, parents as comfortable as possible in the, shall we say, in the autumn of their years.
That's a very nice way of putting it.
So I'll tell you a little bit about my experience of elderly care. Talk about my side of the family first, because right up to date, we've got my wife's Jackie, my father-in-law, who's our most recent project, shall we say, in terms of looking after. But sadly, my late mother passed away back in 2011, suffering with dementia for a number of years. And just before we started the recording, I was telling you about her care. We were very fortunate, if that's the right word, that my now late father actually outlived my mother, and he was able to look after the majority of her needs for a good long while, and she was able to enjoy staying in her own home for as long as was possible. Sadly, she contracted a urinary infection, and that was kind of the beginning of the end. Up until then, as I said, she'd been diagnosed with vascular dementia, and with that, over a period of time, cognitive skills and her speech beginning to diminish somewhat, and the change of character over that time was really extraordinary. It's such a debilitating condition that really there's nothing you can do about. You can just, as I say, try and make the best of the situation. It really hit me hard the day that I walked into the house just to visit for a cup of tea, walked into the house and said hello to Mum, and she thought that I was her cousin.
Mm-hmm.
And she started talking about things that, frankly, I was lost. I couldn't keep up, and it was a good job that my dad was there, and my sister, because they could piece together what was going on in her mind. She was talking. My mother was brought up on a farm. She was talking about everyday things on the farm that she thought that I would know about because she thought I was her cousin, and all of a sudden I wasn't Paul, I was Geordie. And Geordie, has this been done? Has that been done? And this sort of thing. And when I walked away that day, I thought, wow, that's just proves to me what a condition this is. But fast forward, I mean, we had lots of experiences like that, where, and what we found was that my mother, she huge swings in temper and anger. And I can remember some days she would sit there and she would clench her fists and she would be banging on her legs. My father would step in. Throughout, my father was the one that she would always react the best to. If we needed her to calm down or to anything like that, my father was able to do that, where I was less likely to do it. My sister was less likely to do it. So very grateful that my father was able to do that, because apart from that, there's very little that we could have done. So in terms of care, that time my father took care of everything, whether it be her personal care, the companionship, the household support. All of that came through my father until, as I say, sadly, she contracted a urinary infection. She was admitted to hospital through A&E at the time. spent, I think it was just 2 nights. 2 nights she spent at the main general hospital local to us before she was transferred to another infirmary 7 or 8 miles away, which was more specialised in elderly care. And she was moved onto a ward there until the infection cleared up. And thereafter, and that was another, I would say, don't call me a liar for this, maybe another 2 weeks before she was moved from there to a smaller country care home, a council run, with a level of nursing care available there. So it wasn't a residential home. It was definitely care. And at that point, we started to look for a long-term care home locally that not only we were happy with, and we got several tips from people who had been down the road of trying to look for these sorts of homes. And they gave us some good pointers as to when you walk in, were there any aromas which you would rather not there be? that sort of thing. I mean, sounds very obvious, but you have to consider these things. So eventually, it took us approximately 10 months from that first experience of a residential care home, finding one that was actually suitable, that specialised in dementia care. And then, sadly, that was 6 months thereafter that my mum had in that home. But we'd like to think that it was a happy time. Certainly spent. There was a Christmas fell within that 6 months, and the staff were really very good. They were caring. They kept spirits high. They tried as much as they possibly could to get the residents involved and get them to do things that, if someone without the experience of seeing this sort of thing were to walk in, they would think, what is going on here? It's like they'd walked into perhaps a kindergarten rather than an elderly care home. And they're doing things, we have a mutual friend in Donna who goes into care homes, and she does pom-pom parties. That sort of thing, you'll get somebody in there and they've got pom-poms, but everybody's sitting in a circle and they're getting exercise and they're getting a little bit of involvement into a little bit of music playing. And, these are all good activities just to get everybody involved and get them cared for outside of the normal sort of, the food and the lodgings and all that sort of thing. So that it was a good end to this, but it's quite extraordinary when I think back that clarity of memory that my mum had for things that had happened before I was born 20, 30 years ago. She could tell you to the exact minute, I would say, she's telling us so, and she could relate to that in huge detail. What did you have for breakfast, Mum? No, not a clue. Have I had my breakfast today? She would say. And it's just really, really horrible situation to find yourself in. And for obviously, it's not about me. It's about Mum. How much she was aware that she actually had a condition, I don't know. I don't know how you could prove that. There are people far smarter than me. I would be able to say that, but that was certainly my experience. And of course now, with my move to my father-in-law, who he lives about 5 miles from us, in what would, I suppose, we would refer to as sheltered accommodation. So he has a small 1-bedroom flat with a kitchen, living room, and a little hallway, and it means that the elderly can have a level of independence within a community. There are public areas, so if they fancy, they have something that they call what do they call it again? It's the afternoon blether. Now, I don't know if blether is a phrase that you'll be familiar with, but in Scots, it's a natter. It's a conversation. So they call it the afternoon blether, and there'll be a group of them. It tends to be the same people all the time. They'll gather around, they'll have a cup of tea, but at certain times I think maybe something stronger might pass their lips. Who knows? And they'll sit down and they will put the worlds to right in an afternoon. And I sometimes think, well, maybe they should be in Parliament and get it all back onto the straight and narrow. But we've turned that corner again, and sad to report that my father-in-law has been admitted to hospital in the last couple of days, and he is now on Ward 1, a cardio ward in Nine Wells Hospital in Dundee. Now, he's 85, and he has some additional health concerns because he suffered with polio. He contracted polio when he was about 9-year-old. He comes from Ireland, and he was found himself with the rest of the lads. They were playing in the burn, which in the river that's at the back of the. He was also brought up on a farm, at the back of the farm there, and they believe that that's where he contracted it, and he has since that age he never had the use of his left arm completely, and all the muscle deteriorated, and but he never let that stop him from doing what he wanted to do over the years. I mean, he worked with Tarmac. He had a good long-term position with them. He travelled the length and breadth of the country on different projects. He was central on part of the construction of of several big projects. He worked on the Thames Barrier. He worked on the Conway Tunnel. He worked on, I can't remember which prison it was, but it was a prison up in Yorkshire. Can't forget what the name of that one is. But he was always active in that respect, doing his job. His and you will like this, Prakash. His thing was golf. He was before he moved up to Scotland, because he lived in Wales for 30 years. He was the club captain at Conway Golf Club.
Oh, wow.
And he was also an active member in the One Arm Golf Society. Mm-hmm. And I've had a little bit of stuff to do with that. We went on, we were over in Ireland. He was playing in the competition, and playing in Sligo, in sort of west of Ireland. Yeah. And I caddied for him. I rue the day that I agreed to do that, because the rain that day, and if you know the west of Ireland, it came in that level, straight into the face. It was absolutely unbelievable. But he had a half decent round, so he was very happy. I was soaked, I was fed up, and I just wanted to make my way to the clubhouse bar. Thank you very much.
Good luck for the 19th hole.
The 19th hole, indeed, yes. And so that's never stopped him doing that. But latterly, and this was about approximately 7 years ago now, he had to hand back. I mean, obviously having a working career where he was driving many miles a year. He loved his car, travelled the length and breadth of the country, but he got macular degeneration, which there are two varieties. He has the dry variety, which means that it can't be operated on. So he has drops to take. But for those that perhaps don't know what macular degeneration is, if you can imagine just the lens, the aperture of a camera. So with normal sight, it's fully open. The light can get in quite nicely. But as the degeneration, it closes in. So the way that he's explained it to me, it's like he has half decent peripheral vision, but nothing. So if I were looking at you now, Lynn, he wouldn't be able to see your face. Your face would be just a black mark, but he could see the curtains behind you, and he would see perhaps your shoulders, and obviously by your voice he would know who you were. But that's what it does. So with his sight and with his polio, and now he's been admitted to hospital with this heart problem. With his pulse, his heartbeats are now, when he was admitted, were up to 189. Yesterday they come down to about 170, and now they're a little bit lower. So the medication is doing its job and it is coming down. But in terms of care, prior to going into hospital, we go over and on a regular basis. We have a company locally called Wilshire Farm Foods. This is not an advert, but this is
I know them, I think.
he can get a good meal, which he can microwave. Pierce the top, put it in the microwave for 15 minutes, 13 minutes. 13 minutes or whatever, and he gets a hot meal, which meat and 2 veg, and he's very happy with that. And he's capable enough to make his own breakfast and heat up some soup for lunch, or a sandwich or a roll or something like that. So that's that sort of thing he was prepared to do. But all these things need to be put in place, because when you don't have full sight and you only have the use of one, you've lost the use of one of your limbs, and you're 85, and the care that you have to, the things that you have to look after are perhaps more broader than you would think. It's not just about making somebody's meal, it's looking after their finances, it's their household support, making sure that the house is clean, that the beds are changed, and that you do the shopping for him, because he's really not able to walk any distance. These sort of things. We've just gone through the process. Actually, the chair's about to be delivered on Monday of getting one of these recliner riser chairs, which are superb. And I tell you what, I'm going to get rid of all the chairs in our house, and I'm just going to put in all these recliners because they're so comfortable. You don't have to do anything. You just press a button and they lift you, and you're up on your. It's just fantastic. I want one of these now. But there's just so many considerations that you have to take care of. And the residential complex that he's in there, they keep sending out these. I'll give you an example. This is incredibly crazy stuff. They put out, first of all, they put out a questionnaire, and it's about 6 or 7 pages printed onto A4, so they're not saving any trees here. And they asked for this questionnaire to be completed, and it's about using local council services online. Now, my father-in-law is actually, because of the macular degeneration, he is registered as partially sighted. He's registered with RNME. So first of all, there's just no thought process goes into this. So they send out a questionnaire. How is he supposed to fill out this questionnaire? He couldn't read it. Now, I appreciate that you can be blind and you can have access to digital, to IT, to a computer, but he doesn't. He's chosen not to. He doesn't have a computer. He does have internet access because he has, he uses I'm being very wary to use the word here. There are these devices that are triggered by a word that begins with A, and you can do your shopping on them. They come from Amazon, and they are. The reason I'm trying not to say it is because if I do say it, the likelihood is that mine will come on. But it's called Alexa. So he uses that to great use. So he loves listening to the radio, so he listens to the radio through that device, and he can ask up-to-date news reports and that sort of thing. He can put timers on, because to see the timer on the microwave might not be that easy, but we've got all sorts of aids put in place. We call them bumps. So they're little plastic stickers which fit to the microwave. You're nodding there, Prakash. I think you know what I'm talking about here. So you can feel. So if you set it on, for argument's sake, 10-minute timer, you can feel where the bump is. You can just turn the dial to where the bump is. You know that's going to be 10 minutes. But what if you want 13-minute timer? What if you want a 14-minute timer? So you can't have a bump on every single minute. So he uses the Alexa to set the timer for his meal, that sort of thing. But we've also arranged for his medication that's delivered by the local chemist. I don't know if delivery was an option when you were running your chemist.
We used to deliver a lot.
Yeah. So, and because it's repeat prescriptions, we never have to go back in and reorganise the prescription. It's just automatic and it's delivered, and that's the prescription there ready for him. So there are definitely ways and means to get around, but it doesn't make the whole care process any easier, because it would be nice just to go to visit in the flat, just have a cup of tea and visit and talk and just and but what we find is that we're going along on a daily basis with intent to actually do something, not necessarily to see dad. It's to arrange the next thing that comes along. So that's my experience of elderly care.
That's very interesting.
Bit of a mixed bag, I have to say. There's good, there's bad, and there's definitely ugly along the way.
I think most of us have to go through that experience in life sometime.
It's what we've all got to look forward to, Prakash, yes.
The thing is, from my point of view, I have never had that experience because living here, my parents used to live in Kenya. So we only visit them once a year. So I could see what was happening because mainly my sisters looked after them. So that sort of thing, because I wasn't able to look after them or do anything specifically. So I was just talking about how guilty I felt not being able to look after my parents. But I used to go at least once a year from about 2000 till 2016 when my mom passed away. My dad passed away in 2004. And about a month before, I spent a month with him. And I knew at that time that I probably won't see him again. So at least I had that pleasure of being with him that time. And I came back, and about a month later, and he passed away in November 2004. And obviously, I had to go back. I spent a couple of months in Nairobi with my mom. Mom lived with about 2016, July. And I was there for the last week of her life. Stayed with her, but she was in almost like semi-conscious, so she wasn't speaking or anything. She's in a hospital bed. But in Nairobi, once you go in hospital, they're always there. The theory is you never come out, especially when you're past 70. Dad was 78, Mom was 83 when they passed away. So I managed to at least say hello to her, and I think somehow she recognized my voice, and I think she opened her eyes, so which was a good sign. So that's the story of my parents. But living that side, however, but there are stories with patients when patients come to pharmacy. You have limited time with them. Come in to either speak to you about their medications, you few minutes. Sometimes you do a proper interview and medication review, then you get to know them better. But it's got to be all professional. You can't actually get very involved. You got to keep boundaries. So, I mean, you do see issues like dementia, sort of weight loss. You can see people are going gradually poorly as they come in your pharmacy regular, especially the regular customer. But that comes to a regular customer I had, a lady in the 90s, around 1990. I used to do medicine once a month to her. She used to invite me into her house, and she lived till 104. And I got invited to a 100th birthday party, which was a really good honor for me. So you don't get invited to your patient's 100th birthday parties very often. And that's the experience you'll always remember in your life. So there are some good stories of old age. And I think people talk about euthanasia and all that sort of things. But we need to bear in mind, some people do live till old age. Some people are quite active. I mean, take all of these veterans, World War II veterans. Some of them live a long time, and they're so motivating when you hear their stories, you know? And I think those are things we should really, when we talk about old age, keep in mind. Yeah? Over to you, Lynn.
Okay, well, yes, I had some issues really over the case of elderly care. When my dad died, my mum was still alive, and they live in sort of the back of our house, and so he was linked up to oxygen cylinders all the time, so he couldn't do very much. Mum used to look after him, so I didn't really have to do anything, although I did used to go through in the evenings and sit with them. Then Dad died in 2000. Mum stayed with us for about 18 months, I think. But they had bought a bungalow before Dad died, which they were intending to move into until my dad got ill. And the thing he had was something where his organs packed up one by one. So it was a long drawn out procedure. So they couldn't really move into the bungalow, and Mum would never have managed, to be perfectly honest, on her own. Anyway, Mum didn't really want to go into the bungalow, and she didn't really want to be with us either. It was a really awkward time. One day she just said to me, I'm ready to go into my bungalow. So we moved her there. She did really well, got on and catered for herself. I used to take her shopping and all that sort of thing, and we'd take her out because I was working full time as well, so that made it a little bit difficult. But then slowly, as she got older, she was getting like weaker. For instance, I'd get bottled water and then I'd ease off all the caps on all the bottles for her and then do them up again, because it was silly little things like that she would struggle with. But then she was not herself, and I didn't quite know what it was. And she kept saying, no, I'm all right, dear. But I knew she wasn't. And what it was a UTI. And that was my entrance into the world of UTIs. And oh my God, aren't they horrendous?
Yeah.
She got over that one, and then a little while later she got another one. And then one day I rang her in the morning, as I did every morning. No reply. And I thought, oh, she's probably in the loo. And left it about a quarter of an hour, rang her again, no reply. Luckily, Peter was at home, so I flew through to the office and said, it's wrong. We've got to get round to Mum's now. It was another UTI that she got, and she had been hallucinating during the night. When I walked in the door, she was laying on her back in the hall, and there was blood everywhere. There was blood up the walls where she'd been scraping the walls, blood all over the carpet, right the way through into the lounge. And I just walked in, and she'd got her head towards the front door. And I said, oh, Mum, what has happened? And she said, nothing, dear. And Peter called the ambulance. We got her into hospital, and that was a UTI. She had, where the blood came from, we split her knee open right across the middle of, and they thought that they'd never be able to do anything with it, that it would be an open wound forever. And but one very, very clever surgeon stitched her up, and you'd never believe a lady of her age, I mean, she must have been late 80s at that point, how quickly she healed. So anyway, this really serious one where she'd hallucinated, sort of made it clear she needed care. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be there and be at work and run the house, so I had to call in some help. And the first week that I used a care agency, that cost me £1,972 something 50. And I thought, my God, how on earth am I going to keep putting care in for Mum at £2,000 a week? I can't do it. Where's the money coming from? Luckily, Mum had got savings. So I thought, right, what do I do here? So I rang some more agencies, got some people in as a carers, that Mum seemed to like. I was flitching all these people from all the agencies. And I built up a team of about 20-something carers. So I worked out a schedule for them. That was time-consuming in itself, but at least Mum had 24/7 care. And that was working okay. But then things were happening that I couldn't pinpoint. And when I spoke to one of the carers, she said, your Mum raised her hand to me. Now, Mum was never a violent person, never. So I thought maybe that could be dementia setting in. So that's how it started, and it just went on from there. I kept trying to get all the carers to play games with her. I mean, there was everything there. She loved Scrabble. And I had her over one weekend, and I said, shall we have a game of Scrabble, Mum? She was good at Scrabble. The only thing was, she laid all the letters back to front. So she would spell the word on the board, and I was saying, shall I just straighten those for you, Mum? And yes, dear. And, I was around the right away so I could, so that's quite funny, really. But it was sad at the same time, but it was funny. And lots of little funny things sort of happened. And, but it's tough when they don't know who you are, isn't it? As you said, Paul. And she's had a fall and had to be hospitalised. And that's when the big trouble started. And the way they treated Mum, she wasn't on an elderly person's ward. She was on another ward. No idea what it was supposed to be. Just one for females, I think. And she just sat down in the bed, and I said to one of the staff nurses, could you possibly give me a hand and help me get her up the bed? Because it's really awkward with these hospital beds, isn't it? And she said, you can't do it. You can't do it. And she sort of pushed me out of the way, and I was so surprised. I walked backwards, and she just pulled the curtains round, and they were so unkind. Mum shouted in pain, and Mum was not one for shouting. So I thought, right, I'm stepping in here. So I had a big go at the staff, and I told them that they weren't fit to be called a hospital. Anyway, they said that they'd look into it, but of course they didn't. We got Mum home again. And then, unfortunately, she had another fall, and she was back in hospital again. And once again, they were treating Mum badly. And I asked, when was the last time my mother had any water? She doesn't drink now. And I said, I beg your pardon. So she said, no, every time we offer her water, she says no. I said, you're talking with somebody with dementia. They will just say no. Just give it to her and say, here we are, here's a drink. And she'll take it. They more or less told me to mind my own business. So that was it. I blew. And I'm not normally one to do things in public, but I did. All the people in the ward were nodding. I was going at it hammer and tongs. She said, you can take your mother now. And I said, no, I can't, because I'm not set up for it. I haven't got the carers in place. So one of them said, well, we'll send her home anyway. I said, you'll be sending her to an empty house. And what are you going to do then when you can't get in? So there was a lot of backwards and forwards. And I thought, right, this is it. I've had enough. You will give her the water tonight. I will come and check in the morning and see how she is. Do you know, she was back to her old self because she'd been given water all night, and that's all it was. They were refusing her water because she said no. And this is really, really bad. And that was in what used to be called the Norfolk and Norwich Hospital. It's called something a bit different now, but everybody that lives in the area will know exactly what I'm talking about. They are appalling, and that's the NHS. I was paying up the carers $1,500 a week, and Mum's money was dwindling fast. That was in 2019. Yes, COVID, wasn't it? So I couldn't go and see her. I did sneak in once to see her, but other than that, I did keep my distance, as we were told to, whilst the people that were telling us were not doing. But anyway, I decided that I'd contact social services. And I said, look, I was told that there was no help for my mum from the government because her savings were more than 23,000. I have now spent all of her savings, which was just a few quid short of £250,000. And I said, I've got down to 23,500 now. So can I please have some help for my mother? And the answer, and so she said, yes, I'll take the details. So she started taking these details down and said, your mother doesn't own the property, does she? And I said, yes, she does. She said, then I'm sorry, we can't help at all. You'll have to sell the house. So I then had to find a home, which I did. but I couldn't even go and look at it because of it. I wasn't allowed in. I couldn't check it out. And I didn't know anybody who'd got people in there that I could check it out with. The mum used to ring me every day, and sometimes a few other more times than that. And she kept saying, this is not a good place to be. And so I actually rang up social services and I said, will you please go in there and see my mum and see what your vibes are about this home that I have put her in, and I can't go because of COVID. So how do I know that this is okay? I had spoken with her a few times, and she said, Lynn, as far as I'm aware, that is a good home that you're using, but I will go and check out. So anyway, she went in, and I'd taken some photos and some of her nicer clothes because she was a very smart lady. She was about the stature of the Queen. And what I didn't know was they called her Queenie because they thought that she looked so much like the Queen. So instead of Marge, her name became Queenie at the end. And so they were obviously very friendly towards her. And and the ladies from the social said that, no, that was okay. She said, but she was having a cup of tea. I said, tea? She doesn't drink tea. She hates tea. And so she said, oh, no. She's having showers. I said, she hates a shower. So she said, not anymore. She doesn't. And so, that was quite nice. I was feeling very guilty, let's put it that way, about putting her in there. But it turns out that it was all right in the end. She died from a brain hemorrhage, basically. But she rang me on the Sunday morning, and we had a little chat. And and she said to me, I keep saying this home's not very good. And I said, yeah. So she said, it is all right, really. So I said, oh, good. Okay. She said, I think it's me, dear. I think it's me. So she'd realised that it was what she was thinking rather than what was actually happening. And then her last words were, it's time to move on. And I said, yeah, okay, Mum, I'm still looking. Not realising that was the end. 6 o'clock in the morning, I was told she was in hospital. Rung the hospital, and they said that they would let me go in. But she was out of it. She just wasn't there and didn't open her eyes. So I had a chat with the nurses, and then I came away. And then they rang me at 5 the next day and said, I think you ought to get here. I said, I can't. My car's off the road. We live in the country. There is a bus route, but I have no idea what times they run. My other half is out. I can't come until he comes back. By the time I ring a taxi, it will be too late because I live 15 miles away. You haven't given me enough time. I knew I wouldn't make it. She was 93. So she did well.
Like, things really quite hard sometimes.
Yeah.
Can understand that.
Yeah. But we will all be there at one point in our lives.
Yeah.
It's always coming to us.
You got to make most of it every day as it comes, I think. Every day.
Yes.
Live for the best.
Absolutely, you have.
The only two things they definitely know for sure is death and taxes.
Yeah.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Now, I think it's been a fairly long session today. I think we've done well. Thank you, Paul, for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story about your parents and your father-in-law. That's really interesting.
Totally enjoyed it.
With you, Lynn. And we shall call it a day on that note, I think. Yes?
Yes.
Thank
Bye
you
for
for
now.
Bye for me. And
Bye. Thanks very much.
cheers. Bye.
You're very- Bye.